Hey everybody, Michael B. Life Raft Ministries. Hey, today's podcast is really pretty doggone exciting for me because not only do I love this story, but I love this woman. She's been a buddy of mine for 2 decades. Got an incredible story to share. I think it's going to inspire you. I think it's going to rock your soul. I think it's going to turn on your God channel. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, meet Cynthia Portaro. Hi, Cynthia.
Hi, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And it's really cool to have, been doing this now for a couple of years in different formats and the Christian radio stuff. And it's really cool when I actually have somebody that I personally know, love, admire, and has, had a pretty interesting journey with God. So I'm going to set this up a little bit, and then hopefully you can just share your amazing story with our audience. So, there's this chronology of events: 2 beautiful children, a beloved husband, cancer diagnosis, and in a particular order, Mikey, your son, was tragically murdered. There was followed by a horrific accident with your beautiful daughter, Christy, and I believe one of my favorite places in the world, Brian Head. And then you get an unexpected and a very unwelcome cancer diagnosis, which you and I have in common. And then your husband passes away right about the time that the murderer that did this to your son goes to trial. And that's just kind of the beginning, the tip of the iceberg. But we are really honored to have you because I think in today's world, there's going to be a lot of people with a lot of loss. There already are. There are people that have had it, but I think we're all going to face it in increased measure. So let's just start at the beginning, man. I know you have a journey with God. I know you have a way of sharing the story. So why don't we just start with the way you share it, Cynthia?
Well, what I'd like to add in the cancer diagnosis part of my life, that was 9 months after my daughter was killed. Well, she wasn't killed. It was she died in an accident. People kind of use that word differently.
Right.
Michael was killed. Michael's life was taken brutally. The cancer diagnosis, the doctor at that time gave me 6 months to live and told me that I needed to get my affairs in order. And I jumped off that table and said, listen, you may be a doctor, but you are not my physician. If you read Psalms 139, he numbers my days, not you. And here I am 8 years later. Amen. To bring hope to a very hurting world, like you said. Wednesday night, I spoke to a group of youth, and 7 came and dedicated their life to the Lord, and 3 of them came and shared with me their attempts that they've made to take their own life. And it's rampant in children today, and my message brings hope through this isolation. I talk about isolation and what we do with that as a community right now with our children. We need to have them more social. We need to have them talking. If they don't want to talk to their parents, they should have somebody that's there that they can share with. And I just was notified the last 2 weeks, 2 young men in their early 30s committed suicide. One of them is I don't know what his title is, but he does TV shows for TMZ. I don't know if you heard about him. I can't even think of his name right now.
No, I didn't actually know. And I know that it's an epidemic, and especially with teens, at the highest rates ever happened. I think it's part of the plot of the enemy to steal, kill, and destroy, as we know them all too well to do. And right now, that is the byproduct of this, what I believe is a fake pandemic madness. So let's go back to your life is kind of just rolling along. I don't remember the exact year that this happened with Mikey, but I remember talking to you shortly thereafter.
11.
Yeah, 2011. He's rolling into a restaurant that I used to go to. It's right next to my old office. And take us through that a little bit and how you heard about it. And what exactly does a mother's heart go through at that
Oh,
moment?
geez. That is a loaded question, but I can answer that. I Mikey was out selling tickets. He was a songwriter and performer, and him and his partner Jeff, who now some of you may have heard is Echo,
Mm,
and that was the name of their group, Echo Heart Hop. But he was out selling tickets, and young black man, probably I think he was a month younger than Michael, decided that he wanted to steal Michael's car, and Michael's car door was open, so he came from behind and put 6 rounds into his body, head, and threw him out like a cockroach on the ground and left him there and drove off with his car. Michael lied there for 10 minutes before somebody actually found him right across the street from our local hospital, UMC.
yep.
Lights flashing, emergency room. Nobody saw him until somebody pulled in and said to the bartender, "Hey, there's a man out there laying in the parking lot in a pool of blood."
Mm,
And so at 3:30 in the morning, the police came to the door and wanted to come in. And my first response was, "Who is it?" Because when the police come to your door, you don't get a phone call, you get a knock.
hmm
And so my son, Joe, who was turning 19 2 days later, was on his science trip on his way to Catalina. So he wasn't there, but Christina and my older son, Rico, were actually have 5 children, 2 in heaven. And yeah, the police just announced that, Michael was shot and killed. And I asked them when we were sitting in my living room if they were sure that it was Michael, because you never
Sure.
want to accept that your child is gone. And he handed me his driver's license.
Mm. That had to be a moment.
Devastating.
Had to be a moment. What did you lean into? Who did you call? What kind of scenario did you go through to just come to grips with that kind of an experience?
Well, we were trying to get a hold of Richard. He was out of town. That's my husband.
Yeah.
And we were trying to get a hold of him. He was out on a sales call about a 3-hour drive away. And he wasn't answering the door. I mean, it was 4 o'clock in the morning. And you could read about it in my book, more detail, Beyond the Unthinkable.
Yeah, we're going to have a link up for that. I already posted it in Life Raft and on my personal page. And I would encourage you, I have a couple of very special people in my life that read it and were incredibly moved by it. And the really interesting thing is they know you personally, and there was a ton they didn't know about. There was a ton of things that God took them through the writings of your book. So I cannot encourage the audience enough in that regard.
Well, I guarantee you the ones that personally that read it were there for me during that horrific time. And quite frankly, I don't remember calling anybody but Richard, but within 3 hours, I had at least 150 people in my house and on my patio, and the news was there. And I just, I retreated with a couple of friends to my bedroom and just shut the door. And I don't know, I think what I like to describe it as is there are cries that come out of your body when you're in that much pain, especially, your son being murdered. The sounds that come out don't even sound human to you.
Right.
They're not human. They come from wherever within, and that's pretty much what I was doing at the time.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because research has shown us that biologically every tear we cry has a different chemistry makeup, and it comes from different parts of our being. And it's so profound when they learn that. It's quantum physics at its finest, but there is essentially a mourning that I think God has designed us to be able to do so that we can endure it and go on. And so now this horrific
You're
thing.
definitely in shock.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. Now, all of these things go on, and then the distance between Mikey and Chrissy's accident is how long? Done
5 months.
2011 to.
He was March 30th, 11, and she's September 3rd, 11.
So within
We were
the
up in,
same, yeah, within the
yeah,
same,
we were up
within
in
the same year,
Bryan Head.
same year. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was just 5 months after. And you know, I in my book I say we took a beach trip during the summer, and it was the first time that I had heard Christina laugh again,
Mm,
like she laughs. You know, she was very, very angry. 16-year-old, you know, full of emotions anyway.
sure.
But we had just found her a really good counselor to counsel with, and she was feeling better. And yeah, she cried the most of obviously the boys, you know, they don't show the same emotion that girls do. They're not as dramatic, but yeah, so she was riding her ATV with her friend, and there was a corner that she was coming down the mountain, and my thought process was she was what I like to call a badass on that machine, so she knew how to handle herself. Since she was 4 years old, she was riding, and she, I think a truck or a car was coming up the corner, and she had her phone in her hand, which she didn't have, you know, control of both handlebars, whatever you want to call it. She was on a 4-wheeler.
Sure, sure.
And when she compensated, it flipped into a ditch. And that's where I found her dead body before the paramedics came or anybody else came. I got a phone call from her phone, and some guy said, "Hey, you need to get up to Aspen Road right away. There's been an accident." And I just ran out the door, and there was a group of people around there that were waiting for the police or for somebody. And that's when I pulled up first. I was there within 4 minutes.
You know, I've done so many of these. There's a certain poise that I keep, but it's really hard to keep it together, even though I've lived a lot of years with you and I've been personally around this story a lot. I've been to your cabin and been to Bryan Head a lot, and other places in Bryan Head, and I've been on those trails. I've been on quads there many times. I've been on Aspen Road, you know, hundreds of times. And it's so powerful when people realize that this world is very fragile. We serve a God that's not. So at this moment in time, what happens to you going through that level of experience with you and your relationship with God? I mean, some people go to anger, some people go to depression, some people just, you know, lean in and have the deepest experience possible. All of those are fair because you don't know what you're going to do until you're there. What happened to you, Cynthia?
Well, that particular day, I wasn't very pleasant. I was very upset, and I was crying out to God, and my friends were there to attest it. I was crying out to God, you know, what the F are you doing? What did I do? What is so
Wrong with me?
I mean, I'm serving you, I'm following you, I'm volleyball mom, I'm football mom, I'm, you know, taking care of my children, I'm working, I'm, you know, I love you, Lord. And here, this is how, you know, and I guess I was really blaming him for it, which after I processed and had a year to figure out that, we do walk through what we never get over. And that's what I try to teach people is you don't tell somebody they're in a better place, or, oh, you're so lucky to have 2 angels in heaven. I'm like, they're not angels, number one. And number two, I'm not lucky. Our children are supposed to be here and we're supposed to pass on before them. That's God's proper order. And the enemy, like you said, wants to make us not love God anymore. He wants us to turn from God. And I tell you, I minister to over 100 moms now, and there's some that are a wreck and they don't want anything to do with God. And, even people in my own family, are angry with God. And yeah, I was angry, but I went back to that road, that site a year later, and I repented.
Wow, that's so huge, because I actually believe with all the stuff that I do for people and trying to help them heal, getting to the point where we understand the distorted view of God as he's a loving God, he's an all-knowing God, he's a merciful God, he's a healing God. But the enemy has still got a lot of power in this fallen world, and things happen to all of us. The beauty is from the ashes, you can emerge and you can actually be in a position, because I know you, to help other people, the lives that are being impacted by this because of the journey you've walked through. That's such a beautiful thing. But you go through 6 different stages. I was just trying to think of them. I didn't write them down before this, but
well, actually,
denial.
Michael, there are no stages.
All right, let's
There's
go with that.
the stages and the emotions and the feeling are there, but there's so much more to those stages than psychologists want to expose.
I agree.
And that's what part of my book speaks about, is these are stages that they come and go in waves. They don't, yes, at first you're in shock. Yes, you're in denial. Yeah, I'm still in denial. That's not a state. I still want my kids back.
Right.
I want my family back. I want my husband. I want my family restored. But God spoke to me during my writing of the book, is that he said to me, Cynthia, when I talk about being fully restored, it's not on earth. It's in heaven.
Amen. Amen. That's a powerful word for everybody. And the fact that we can get into a place where we understand the deeper things of God, that we have our sights set wrong sometimes. None of us are guaranteed tomorrow here, but we are guaranteed this future wholeness. We are guaranteed this destiny of eternity with Christ. It's real. The hope of glory is real. So I don't want to just, stop right there, because it's not even close to being over. So now Mikey has passed, Chrissy has passed, and now you're walking around thinking, well, the worst is behind me. And you get diagnosed. See, this is healing. It's when you can smile and not mess up your pretty look with your makeup.
I'm sorry. I got a couple tears coming out in there, and I'm not going to apologize, because that's the price of love.
That's all right.
Is,
all right.
people say, "Oh, I don't
do whatever you got to do, girl."
I don't want to. A lot of people say to me, "Oh, I didn't want to bring up your kids because I didn't want to make you cry." And I'm like, first of all, there's not a day that ever goes by that I don't want to talk about my kids. I don't want to share about my kids. It's no different when you're living and you want to, I love sharing pictures of my grandkids, which I have a new one coming soon in May.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And, when you're not going to make me think about my children differently because you bring them up. Like, I love to hear when my friends share stories about my kids. When I get messages from Mikey's friends, they call me Mama P. And I get messages, oh, I found this, or, I found that, or I read this. And you know, my kids were very social like I am and you are. And, you know, I love to talk about my kids. We parents want you to remember our kids. Our
Oh, you know
family,
what? That
we don't
is
want
such a
them forgotten.
that is such a great word for people because I think too. By the way, that Mama P thing. That because we're older and we pee a lot now. No, never mind. But you didn't get that joke. I thought the joke was really good. Mama P. Is it because we're
Oh,
older and we pee a lot? We both had to
yeah.
go to the bathroom.
No, I've been Mama P since my kids were very little. And
All right.
yeah.
After the joke totally landed flat, here's what I wanted to ask you is that I think there is and I didn't know we'd go this direction, but that's what podcasts are for, long conversations. People really don't know what to do they? Your friends, your family, we don't know what to say, what not to say. I've had the privilege of sitting down, having dinner with you when you had some really interesting moments and challenges. And so I've been talking to you this whole time, but I bet a lot of people don't know what to do. And so your word to them is bring it up, talk about it, open up. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, and this is what when people are going through a season of tragedy,
Mhm.
whether you know them or not, a card, if you're good at writing cards and a note, send them a note,
Mhm.
you know, that you're not just, oh, I'm sorry for your loss. You know, talk about what you know. The best things that I write in my book are stories and I have a few that people have said about my kids, the statements that they said. You know, I like to laugh. I like to laugh at some of the stories that I hear that now, you know, when my kids were teenagers,
I
you know,
know.
you're like, if I knew that then, but you know, if you have money, donate because it's a financial hardship
Yeah.
to
Amen.
have, you know, not only funerals but memorials and dinners and you know,
And
but
life, and
those
you might
people.
be incapacitated for a while legitimately, so we need to come around
Well,
you.
you are,
Yeah.
yeah, because you don't feel very human at that moment. But you know, I tell people if you can donate, donate. If you're an intercessor, pray.
Mhm.
And send a card and say, hey, I am praying the scripture over your family. I'm praying for you. And I will tell you, I felt the strength of the Lord when people were praying for me.
Boy,
And oh, I'm telling you, I could feel the difference. I
yeah.
could feel when people were actually praying. And another thing is I tell parents like, oh, like I try to pray and I can't even talk to God and I don't know what to do. And I just tell them, don't.
Mhm.
God knows your heart. He knows what you're thinking. It doesn't matter. And what I would do is when I couldn't utter a prayer, I couldn't say anything out of my mouth, I would just put on worship music
Mhm.
and just feel the presence of God. And sometimes we don't even feel the presence of God, but it's a battle that you have to walk through. Or what I tell people is don't believe everything you think
Mhm. Yeah. It's
because
interesting
you're
you
not
say that.
always right.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I think feelings are very real, but often they're not very accurate. And so, you feel these waves of emotions. God's just abandoned me. God's not a good God. They feel real, but they're not always accurate. So, I mean, that's a powerful word, and how to interact with people and how to love people through these difficult times. And again, I think we're all going to have a lot more of them. This is so cool. So now I want to understand. You got the beginning of 2011 with Mike. You got the end of it with Chrissy. And now we're headed into, I don't even know how long the gap is between there and you're diagnosed with cancer.
April 2012, 9 months after Christina died,
So nine
I
months
went in
later.
for I went in for yeah, like a new birth. I went in for a routine colonoscopy and found out I had colon cancer.
Mm.
And I had a very large tumor in there. No symptoms, no signs, no changes in my body. And that's when I told you in the beginning, I was going to fight because I wasn't going to die. I wanted to live for my other kids and be here for
You know,
them. And
I'm curious because I just realized something about you and I. I had the same moment. It was discovered in the colonoscopy, except I had symptoms. I had a massive stroke 5 days before, and it was
right,
undiagnosed cancer that caused the stroke, not anything cardiovascular, not being overweight, none of that. So I remember the moment of reality, and I heard what you said. Tell me about that next day or two, because I remember that next day or two pretty vividly. For me, it was only 5.5 years, it was a little bit longer with you. What exactly went through your heart and your mind, your soul when you heard this is what it is? The next couple of days.
warrior, warrior,
Mm, mm. Boy, you know what?
warrior.
I think the
I was
very
not going to, I was not going to be defeated by this.
mm,
I was not. I got on the internet. Richard got on the internet. He actually found a doctor who's from Germany at UCLA, and it takes 6 months to get in, to see this guy, if you can even get into him.
yeah.
He's like the top surgeon in the world, and for this type of surgery. And so this is now April. I found out 3 days before my daughter's would have been 17th birthday.
Got it.
And I spoke to the youth at her high school in Chapel that on her birthday. So I had found out 3 days later, and I share some of that in the book. But so we got in to see this doctor in the first week of May.
Wow, praise the Lord.
Scheduled my surgery right 2 days before Michael's would have been 24th birthday. And Richard had wheeled me out into the prayer garden with some blue balloons to do a balloon release for his birthday. And I just thought, you know, God, this is the things I'm talking about that we don't see. Like there's things that I find out about now that are just crazy, amazing, that God did during those times of trauma. And,
Mm,
you know, there was days that I would hallucinate. I seriously would just hallucinate. I never did drugs. You know, I didn't go there. I didn't do the marijuana thing or anything like that. A lot of my moms do.
and you call yourself a Detroit girl like me? I don't know if we can hang out anymore. I mean, that was our whole upbringing. We by the way, we didn't know each other back then, but we both grew up in Detroit in the same era. And it's kind of interesting how life goes full circle. We didn't end up meeting until here 20 years ago. But all right, so now you're battling the cancer battle. There is a time, I don't know how long, and then there's a diagnosis with your husband, Richard. What kind of time frame is that?
Okay, so my surgery was in May. I started chemotherapy in the end of July. So I was going through that battle. And then October of the same year, 2012, my husband, Richard, was diagnosed with a squamosoma nova, whatever, tumor in his sinus cavity that was kind of like a snake that was traveling into the brain. So he had 2 surgeries, chemo, radiation, and 2 years of that. And he lost one of his eyes during that time. And he, it was not a pretty cancer battle at all.
Now you're walking this out from your diagnosis to your husband's. Is this, and then he passes away, Richard passes away, and I knew Richard as well. Is it 2.5 years from your diagnosis roughly that he ends up passing away throughout all of this battlefield? Wow.
Yeah, it was, he actually passed away Thanksgiving Day 2014, which was his favorite holiday because he loved my cooking.
Wait a
Thanksgiving.
minute, wait a minute. Is there another part of your story that happens on that day or around that day with Mikey's murderer, or is that a different day?
No. 2 weeks after Richard died and we
Mhm.
were done with the memorial was, we did the memorial first week in December. And then a week after that, I got the phone call from the DA's office that they were beginning the trial, and they wanted, I had Richard's phone, and they called on Richard's phone. And when I answered, it was the DA, and he didn't know that Richard had passed away.
Mm,
So he asked me who was going to represent uh, the family at the
right,
murder trial.
right.
And I just said, me,
Yeah.
because it was going to be me.
Now that trial goes on for a period of time. He gets convicted, and the sentencing possibility is the death penalty.
It
And it
was a death penalty.
was the death penalty. And you, and probably rightly so, biblically speaking, by the way, if you don't know the word of God, it sounds crazy, but if you do, that's what the Bible says. You take a life, you lose a life. Something happens in that moment. Somebody shows up in court and persuades the judge out of the death penalty. Who was that?
Me. Not on my own doing. I was asked to do it that morning while I was getting ready to go for the sentencing. And it was a real powerful moment for me because I was like, really? What more could I do? Like, now you want me to do this? And
So you felt prompted by the Holy Spirit.
kind of started to think, well, he did it for us, he did it for me. And my family, my mom was there the whole time with me during the trial, by the way. And some close friends couldn't come every day, but one in particular, Vicky, came just about every day, but one, she had a council hearing. And so I just got on the floor in my bathroom that morning and I just cried. And I called my sons and I said, hey, this is what I heard from God. What do you think? And they said, Mom, we're with you. We don't want another death on our hands. And I don't know if people know the death penalty process or not, but it can take over 20 years
Right.
to actually get that done. And there hasn't been, I think since 2006, there hasn't been anybody executed in Nevada. And that wasn't the course of, I only found this out after.
Right.
One of my friends was a previous senator, and he was telling me, hey, you just saved the state a lot of money. And I'm like, what? But anyway, you know what?
Amazing. I know who you're talking about, John, but yeah, that is just, okay, so by the way, you're messing up my makeup and my mascara, which is unconscionable. So now you are entering into a new season of your life. All of this is behind you, but is it really? Because there's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of PTSD going on. You're walking into ministry steps and trying to help others at the same time. What does your life look like these days? Tell us about the end game.
I minister to grieving mothers and some kids. My son Joseph, he takes on some kids for me. He's really, been through a lot. Our family has been through a lot. And he's working with kids at Faith Lutheran right now.
Oh, it's beautiful.
He's coaching. He went back, to coach over there. So he
Beautiful.
gets to hear the things that happen at, kids' homes. And, when they shut football down and they shut schools down, he called me crying. Mom, you don't know what these kids are going through at home. And so, there's a whole gamut that can happen in a family. And it gave me the opportunity to, really let God work in me, because when you know that when you're out doing ministry work, whether it's feeding the homeless or you're helping severe, special needs children or whatever it is you do, it gives you a sense of belonging. It gives you a sense of hope in the world. And so that's pretty much the basis of what I do. I used to run a group, and that got to be way too emotionally difficult. So I started doing small, like 4 or 5 moms at a time. We'll go have happy hour and we'll connect with each other. And so it's not just me ministering to moms and widows, by the way. I have a widows little core because I'm a widow.
Right.
And I know what it's like to be lonely. I'm a person. I'm a people person. I love people. I love to be around people. I love to be in relationship. I love, to love. I love to serve and to give to my family and to a man. And, that was all taken away from me. And, my kids are all out on their own. My son just got married in July, and, he's having a baby in May. And so, life does go on, but it goes on so much differently than I could ever explain to people that haven't been through anything. But I venture to say that no matter what age you are, I mean, I have 10-year-olds that have battled cancer, that have died of cancer, that, and it's scary to think that these young people, their whole life is ahead of them, have to put on this battle to live. And praise God that one of my very dear friends, her daughter just came through a cancer battle and she's cancer free. But 2 years, this girl went through so much as a young baby. That's a baby, right? I have a 10-year-old granddaughter, and she's a baby to me.
Yeah, I know.
You have grandkids.
Yeah, I got 3. I'm so moved by the hope of what God has done in your life and how you navigated this road. And I got to tell you, because I've known you a long time, and I said this once before to you in my living room. I think we were having a Bible study, and I said, this is the most congruent I've ever seen you, and this is the most congruent I've ever seen you. And I'm just really proud of you. I'm so thrilled that we have access to a God that can heal, deliver, allow us to go through things and come out the other side in a way that we can touch others. We can impact others' lives with the journey that God brought us through. And I'm just so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for your story. I want the audience to know, not only can you buy her book, but wherever this gets circulated, you can book her to speak at church, an event, or whatever might be needed. And if there's somebody in this audience that has a very serious challenge with all of these kinds of things that we just discussed, I think you can reach out to her personally as well. Is that fair, Cynthia?
Yeah, actually, I have a website.
I put it up on the site, and it's there.
Oh,
CynthiaPortaro.com.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And they can message me on there. They can send me a message. They can like my official Cynthia Portaro Facebook page, Instagram, and I have at Cynthia Portaro on Twitter. I do a blog on A Time to Heal on Facebook, and plus my journey, my full journey. And one thing I want to just say about my book is it's not just about the trauma. It's about how to walk through what you'll never get over. And I add in, like I said, emotional isolation to those stages. And there's another one called separation anxiety. I mean, do you remember when your child left the roost?
Yeah, sure.
And you were freaked out because you're separated from them. Either they went to the military, they went to college, you know, and you had this fear that something was going to happen. Well, imagine a parent who is separated by eternity with their children. And so I talk about that and what it does. And also, we go through a stage of broken heart syndrome where you actually, your heart shuts down and you could feel the muscle as if you were working out. And so there's so many things that people don't understand and they're not teaching.
Yeah,
And that's my voice right there. That's what I want to tell people, is there's more to those 6 or 7 stages that they want to put you in this box and say, okay, like my first counselor said, how long do you think you're going to need to counsel with me through these stages? And I'm like, wrong counselor. I don't know. I'm new to this murder. Okay. So anyway, but thank you. And you've always been such a good and gracious friend to me and my family. And I know you and Richard were buddies. And
yeah, you know,
so thank
God
you.
works all things together for the good of those that love him and are called according to his purpose. And it is my honor, my dear friend,
Yeah.
we have this moment with you. So,
So one other just tidbit, I kind of got off track there, is if you're out of the country, you can buy my book off Amazon. And if you go to my website, I have a direct link to Amazon. If you're in the country, I can send you a signed copy.
You
and
can autograph it, sign it right directly to them. I love it.
A lot of people like that. I was kind of surprised. And
yeah, and don't forget to say, and I saw you on Michael Besson Life Raft Ministry. Just kidding. Hey, God bless you guys. Thanks for tuning in. And Cynthia, we adore you. May God continue his beautiful blessings and mercy over you and your family's lives. Bye-bye, y'all. See you next time.